Okay, chapter 31 deals with international trade. International trade yields benefits. Trade allows people to produce what they produce best and to consume the great variety of goods and services produced around the world. This chapter and the next provide an introduction to open economy macroeconomics. We begin in this chapter by discussing the key macroeconomic variables that describe an open economy's interactions in the world markets. Look for the answers to these questions. How are international flows of goods and services related? What is the difference between the real and nominal exchange rate? What is the purchasing power parity? And how does it explain nominal exchange rate? By introduction, trade can make everyone better off. One of the 10 principles in chapter 1. This chapter introduces basic concepts of international macroeconomics. The trade balance, which is either trade deficit or trade surpluses, international flows of assets, exchange rates. And we're going to look at the basic concepts. What is a closed economy? An economy that does not interact with other economies in the world. And that's what we have been doing this far. The models we've been studying are assuming the United States is a closed economy. Now we're going to look at an open economy. Open economy is an economy that interacts freely with other economies around the world. It buys and sells goods and services in world product markets. It buys and sells capital assets such as stocks and bonds in world financial markets. Exports are defined as goods and services that are produced domestically and sold abroad. Imports are goods and services that are produced abroad and sold domestically. Net exports, or trade balance, is the value of exports minus the value of imports, flow of goods and services. First Active Learning asks, what do you think would happen to US net exports if, number A, Canada experiences a recession, that is falling incomes, rising unemployment? Number B, US consumers decide to be patriotic and buy more products made in the USA. Number C, prices of goods produced in Mexico rise faster than prices of goods produced in the US. Number A, US net exports would fall due to a fall in Canadian consumers' purchases of US goods. If they don't have jobs, their incomes are falling, then they're not going to buy export from the United States. So US net exports would fall. Number B, this is actually number B, when US consumers decide to be patriotic and buy more products made in the USA, US net exports would rise as US residents buy made in the United States. And that means imports will go down. Number C, prices of goods produced in Mexico rise faster than prices of goods produced in the US. This makes US goods more attractive relative to Mexico's goods. Exports to Mexico increase, import from Mexico will decrease, so US net exports will rise. Variables that influence net exports. What are these variables? Factors that might influence a country's exports, imports, and net exports. Number one, consumer preferences for foreign and domestic goods. If consumers like imports will rise, and prices of goods at home and abroad. If prices in the United States are high, Americans will go shopping overseas. They will have a taste for imports. If prices abroad are high relative to prices in the United States, Americans will shop at home. So, exchange rates at which foreign currency trades for domestic currency. That is the price of one currency vis-a-vis the other. And incomes of consumers at home and abroad. Also, transportation and government policies. Trade surpluses and deficit. Trade surplus, that is positive net exports, is a situation where exports are greater than imports. The country sells more goods and services abroad than it buys from other countries. That is a trade surplus. Trade deficit, that is negative net export, that is, imports are greater than exports. The country sells fewer goods and services abroad than it buys from other countries. Balanced trade is where exports equal imports. The US economy is increasing openness. This graph shows a trend from 1960 to 2015. And as you can see, the world trade is only increasing as a percent of US GDP. In 1960, the US economy was probably about 5% international trade. And it looks like there's an upward trajectory. And at some highest point, about 2008 9, approximately 18% of US GDP was imports. And at that same time, approximately 13% or about 14% was export. So you look like the US economy is becoming more and more globalized, and that trend is only going to continue. The flow of financial resources, net capital outflow or NCO, also known as net foreign investment. Purchase of foreign assets by domestic residents, that is foreign direct investment. When McDonald builds a plant in Moscow, that is foreign direct investment. When Coca-Cola builds a plant in South Africa, that is foreign direct investment. Or foreign portfolio investment. When Americans buy stock in companies like Volvo in Sweden, that is foreign portfolio investment. Now, that you minus the purchase of domestic assets by foreigners. When foreigners build plants here in the United States, that is foreign direct investment. And when they buy stocks or bonds in American corporations, that is foreign portfolio investment. When you net the two, foreign purchase of foreign assets by domestic residents minus the purchase of domestic assets by foreigners, that is how you get the net capital outflow. NCO measures the imbalance in the country's trading assets. When NCO is positive, there is a net capital outflow. That's more Americans are buying foreign assets than foreigners are buying in the United States. There is net outflow of capital. Okay. Net when NCO is negative, there is a capital inflow. That means foreign purchases of domestic assets exceed domestic purchases of foreign assets. The variables that influence net capital outflow, or NCO, are real interest rates paid on foreign assets, real interest rates paid on domestic assets, perceived risks of holding foreign assets, government policies affecting foreign ownership of domestic assets, variables that influence net capital outflow. The equality of NX and NCO, the accounting identity of net capital outflow equals net exports. Every transaction that affects net exports also affects net capital outflow by the same amount, and vice versa. When a foreigner purchases a good from the US exports and net exports increase. The foreigner pays with currency as assets, so US acquires some foreign assets, causing NCO to rise. Every transaction that affects NX also affects NCO by the same amount. When US citizens buys foreign goods, that is US imports rise, net exports falls. The US buyer pays with US dollars or assets, so the other country acquires US assets, causing US net capital outflow to fall. This identity, NCO equals to NX, arises because every transaction that affects NX also affects NCO by the same amount. Let's look at savings and investment. In the open economy, the identity GDP, Y stands for GDP, equals consumer spending, investment spending, government spending, and net exports. Y equals C plus I plus G plus NX. National savings, as we have seen before, is S for national saving equals income minus C minus G. Y minus C minus G equals investment plus net exports. So savings, national savings, is equal to investment plus net exports. So NX is exactly equal to NCO. Savings, national saving, is equal to, therefore, I plus NCO. Savings equals domestic investment plus net capital outflow. International flows. Trade surplus. Whenever the country experiences trade surplus, export is greater than import. Therefore, net export will be positive. Output is greater than domestic spending, which is C plus I plus G. Savings is greater than investment. NCO is positive. When there is trade deficit, exports is less than imports. Net exports is negative. Y is less than domestic spending, which is C plus I plus G. Savings is less than investment, and NCO is negative. Case study: is the US trade deficit a national problem? Before 1980, national saving and domestic investment were close. Small net capital outflow was between -1 and +1% of GDP. After 1980, national saving often falling below domestic investment, there was sizable trade deficit, there was substantial inflows of capital, there was net capital outflow is often a large negative number. NCO is less than zero or negative. Unbalanced fiscal policy, 1980 to 1987, flow of capital into the United States declines due to a fall in national savings. An investment boom between 1991 to 2000, increased flow of capital, Savings increased, government budget surplus, and investment increased. An economic downturn and recovery between 2000 and 2015. 2000 and 2009, savings and investment fell by 6 percentage points. Investment, tough economic times made capital accumulation less profitable. Saving, government began running extraordinarily large budget deficits. 2009 2015, as the economy recovered, saving and investment increased by about 3 percentage points. Trade deficits by a fall in savings in the 1980s, the nation is putting away less of its income to provide for its future. Better to have foreigners invest in the US economy than none at all. Trade deficit by an investment boom. 1990s was an economic boom. The decade of the 90s was a period of economic boom here in the United States. The economy is borrowing from abroad to finance the purchase of new capital goods. For lower return on investment, debts will look less desirable. Is the US trade deficit a problem? The extra capital stock from the 90s investment boom may well yield large returns. The fall in saving of the 80s and 2000s, while not desirable, at least did not depress domestic investment, since firms could borrow from abroad. A country, like a person, can go into debt for good reasons or bad ones. A trade deficit is not necessarily a problem, but might be a symptom of a problem. As of June 30th, 2016, people abroad owned 31.6 trillion in US assets, and US residents owned $24.1 trillion in foreign assets. Therefore, US net indebtedness to other countries is the difference of these two numbers, and that is $7.5 trillion, higher than every other country. Hence, US is the world's biggest debtor nation. Nominal exchange rate. Nominal exchange rate is the rate at which one country's currency trades for another. We express all exchange rates as foreign currency per unit of domestic currency. Some exchange rates, 12th of July 2016 per US dollar, Canadian dollar 1.31 for 1 US dollar. For 1 US dollar, you can get 9.9 euro. For 1 US dollar, you can get 104.13 Japanese yen. For 1 US dollar, you can get 18.39 Mexican peso. Prices of international transactions. What does appreciation or strengthening of a currency mean? An increase in the value of a currency as measured by the amount of foreign currency it can buy. For example, when we say there's dollar appreciation, exchange rate, if you go to Japan and you exchange $1, you get 80 yen per dollar. And the following day, you exchange another dollar and it is 90 yen. That means the dollar has appreciated against the yen. The yen has depreciated, the dollar has appreciated. You got $80 yesterday, 80 yen for $1. Today you're getting 90. That means the dollar is buying more yen, the dollar has appreciated, the yen has depreciated. Depreciation is the weakening of a currency, a decrease in the value of a currency. as measured by the amount of foreign currency it can buy. Let's look at an example of dollar depreciation. If you go to a hotel in Japan and exchange a dollar for 80 yen, and the following day the exchange rate changes to 70 yen, now you are getting less yen for a dollar. The dollar has depreciated. The yen has appreciated against the dollar. Real exchange rate. The real exchange rate is the rate at which the goods and services of one country trade for the goods and services of another. The formula for real exchange rate is lowercase e times p divided by p star, where p is domestic price, p star is foreign price in foreign currency, and lowercase e is nominal exchange rate, that is foreign currency per unit of domestic currency. Example with one good. A Big Mac costs $2.50 in the US, 400 yen in Japan. E equals 120 yen per dollar. E times P, which is price in yen of a US Big Mac, is equal to 120 yen per dollar times $2.50 per Big Mac. And therefore, the Big Mac costs 300 yen per US Big Mac. Okay, you get 300 yen for one Big Mac. That is real exchange rate. Compute the real exchange rate here. E times P over P star is the formula, is therefore equal to 300 yen per US Big Mac divided by 400, which is yen per Japanese Big Mac. And the real exchange rate is 0.75 Japanese Big Macs per US Big Mac. Interpreting real exchange rate. The real exchange rate equals 0.75 Japanese Big Mac per US Big Mac. Correct interpretation, therefore, is to buy a Big Mac in the US, a Japanese citizen must sacrifice an amount that could cost 0.75 Big Mac in Japan. Active learning 2. If nominal exchange rate is 10 pesos per dollar, price of a tall Starbucks latte is equal to, in the United States, $3. In Mexico, P star is 24 pesos. Will get you a tall Starbucks latte. Number A, what is the price of a US latte measured in pesos? Number B, calculate the real exchange rate measured as Mexican lattes per US latte. E times P is 10 pesos, as you can see. 10 pesos times $3 is equal to 30 pesos per US latte. That's number A. What is the price of US latte measured in pesos? You take 10 pesos multiplied by $3 and you get 30 pesos per US latte. Number B, calculate the real exchange rate measured as Mexican lattes per US lattes. The formula for real exchange rate is E times P over P star, and therefore that would be 30 pesos per US latte divided by 24 pesos per Mexican latte, which is equal to $1.25 Mexican latte per US latte. Real exchange rate with many goods. Real exchange rate, which is E times P over P star, is equal to the price of a domestic basket of goods relative to price of a foreign basket of goods. P is equal to the US price level, e.g. consumer price index, measures the price of a basket of goods. P star is foreign price level. If US real exchange rate appreciates, US goods become more expensive relative to foreign goods. The law of one price. The law of one price, when a good should sell for the same price in all markets. A good should sell for one price in all markets. Arbitrage. Arbitrage takes advantage of price differences for the same item in different markets. Example, the law of one price. Coffee sells for £400 in Seattle and coffee sells for $4 per pound in Seattle and $5 per pound in Boston. Can be costlessly transported, that is, ignore transportation. Opportunity for arbitrage, making a quick profit by buying coffee in Seattle and selling it in Boston. It drives up the price in Seattle because demand for coffee goes up in Seattle and drives down the price in Boston because supply goes up in Boston until the two prices are equal. The concept of the purchasing power parity. The purchasing power parity is a theory of exchange rates. Is a unit of any given currency should be able to buy the same quantity of goods in all countries. The basic logic of purchasing power parity, based on the law of one price, a good must sell for the same price in all locations. Example of purchasing power parity. The basket contains a Big Mac. P, price of US Big Mac in dollars. P star, price of Japanese Big Mac in yen. E, exchange rate, yen per dollar. According to PPP, E times P is equal to P star. That is the price of US Big Mac in yen is equal to the price of Japanese Big Mac in yen. Solving for E, we get E is equal to P star over P. Implications of PPP. If purchasing power of the dollar is always the same at home and abroad, then the real exchange rate cannot change. The theory of purchasing power parity. The nominal exchange rate between the currencies of two countries must reflect the price level in those countries. What are the implications of PPP? Nominal exchange rates when nominal exchange rates change when price levels change. When a central bank in any country increases the money supply and causes the price level to rise, it also causes that country's currency to depreciate relative to the currencies in the world. The limitations of PPP. The theory of purchasing power parity does not always hold in practice. One, many goods are not easily traded. Price differences on such goods cannot be arbitraged away. Number two, even tradable goods are not always perfect substitutes. Price differences reflect taste differences. Purchasing power parity is not a perfect theory of exchange rate determination. Real exchange rates fluctuate over time. Large and persistent movements in nominal exchange rates, typically reflect changes in price level at home and abroad. Chapter review. Which of the following statements about a country with trade deficit is not true? Number A, export is less than imports. Number B, net capital outflow is negative. Number C, investment is less than savings. Number D, output is less than CIG or domestic spending. Number two, a Ford Escape SUV sells for $24,000 in US and 720,000 rubles in Russia. If purchasing power parity holds, what is the nominal exchange rate? Rubles per dollar. Okay. The statement that is not true here is C. When we have a trade deficit, savings is usually less than investment, not the other way around. Trade deficit means net export is less than zero, and since net export is equal to savings minus investment, a trade deficit implies that investment is greater than savings. Uh, for the escape, what is the nominal exchange rate in rubles per dollar? Well, the price of escape in rubles is 720,000 rubles. The price in the US is $24,000. The formula is the nominal exchange rate is P star divided by P, which is equal to 720,000 divided by 24,000, and that is equal to 30 rubles per dollar. Summary. Net exports are the value of domestic goods and services sold abroad, that's exports, minus the value of foreign goods and services sold domestically, imports. Net capital outflow is the acquisition of foreign assets by domestic residents as capital outflow minus the acquisition of domestic assets by foreigners as capital inflow. An economy's net capital outflow is equal to its net exports because every international transaction involves an exchange of an asset for a good or service. An economy's saving can be used either to finance investment at home or to buy assets abroad. National savings equals domestic investment plus net capital outflow. The nominal exchange rate is the relative price of the currency of two countries, and the real exchange rate is the relative price of the goods and services of two countries. When nominal exchange rate changes so that each dollar buys more foreign currency, the dollar is said to appreciate or strengthen. When the nominal exchange rate changes so that each dollar buys less foreign currency, the dollar is said to depreciate or weaken. According to the theory of purchasing power parity, a dollar or a unit of other currency should be able to buy the same quantity of goods in all countries. It implies that the nominal exchange rate between the currencies of two countries should reflect the price levels in those countries. Countries with relatively high inflation should have depreciating currency, and countries with relatively low inflation should have appreciating currency.